Scotland. And tightly packed isobars the further north you are means that it will be a blustery day with wind gusts approaching gale force for the north of Scotland, where there will be spells of rain for the Northern Isles, the north and northwest of the mainland. Showery outbreaks elsewhere across western Scotland, damp over the hills of northwest England as well. A lot of cloud for Scotland, northern England, parts of Northern Ireland, but brighter skies further south, and as a result, temperatures up to the high teens, perhaps 23 in London, more like 16, 17 for northern England, and mid to low teens further north again. Now, the spells of rain begin to ease overnight, but it will stay damp for the north and west of Scotland. Clear spells elsewhere, a few fog patches forming. Temperatures dipping away, actually, down to around 2 Celsius in some sheltered parts of central and northern England, as well as southern Scotland. Otherwise, 7 to 9 Celsius typically as we start off Saturday. A bright start to Saturday, some patchy cloud in the west and the far north. The rain in the north of Scotland, though, easing through the day so that most places end up brighter, with lengthy spells of sunshine by the afternoon and increasingly warm. I think by and large mid to high teens for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, but for central and southeast England 20 to 24 Celsius possible on Saturday afternoon. Nevertheless, with the increased warmth, we're going to see an increased threat of showers starting to push up from the southwest and then developing widely across southern parts of the UK during Saturday night. Perhaps even some thunderstorms, some intense rain in places. Further showers or thunderstorms on Sunday as well as Monday, turning warmer by Tuesday.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Analysis. I'm Arlene Foster, and here's what's coming up over the next hour. The Attorney General suggests that the government may override significant areas of the Northern Ireland Protocol, but is it actually going to happen this time? And with the nation marking National Mental Health Week, we speak to a Conservative MP about what can be done to tackle loneliness. With last week's Assembly election results showing political shifts within Northern Ireland, we speak to an organisation that supports victims of the Troubles about how they are dealing with the fallout over the Assembly election. And Jacob Rees-Mogg, he's backing plans to slash civil servant numbers by a fifth to save £3.5 billion a year. But are the government right to do this? Give me your political briefing. Send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews.
Good afternoon, it's 1 minute past 3. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Unions are threatening national strikes over government plans to axe around 90,000 civil service jobs. The Prime Minister wants to free up billions of pounds to ease the cost of living crisis. Downing Street hasn't ruled out compulsory redundancies, but it's hoped a lot of the cuts will occur through natural attrition. Brexit Opportunities Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg says the cull will make the government more efficient.
What is being proposed is a hiring freeze. Up to 38,000 people leave the civil service every year. So over 2 to 3 years, that's how you achieve this number. And then if those jobs are essential, ministers can sign off people being moved into them so that you can continue the level of service simply with a smaller number of people.
The DUP is planning to block the election of a new Speaker to the Northern Ireland Assembly. It says the move will send a clear message to the EU and the government that the post-Brexit trading agreement isn't working and that the protocol risks peace in the country. Party leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson also says the DUP won't nominate a Deputy First Minister, preventing a new executive from forming. Former Brexit Minister Lord Frost says they need to find another way forward.
Make progress in Northern Ireland, you need the consent of both communities and all range of opinion, and it's very clear that that doesn't exist. And the DUP's refusing to nominate a speaker and to take part in the institution simply symbolises that fact. It doesn't cause it, it just makes it obvious. It makes clear what we have been saying for a long time, which is that you can only proceed by consensus.
Nazim Zaghari-Ratcliffe's husband says the Prime Minister didn't explicitly apologise for how her detention in Iran had been handled. The former British aid worker, who was held captive for 6 years, met Boris Johnson for the first time since returning to the UK in March. She told the Prime Minister she'd lived in the shadow of his words, which had had a big impact on her for the best part of 4.5 years. Richard Ratcliffe said there were lessons to be learned from the handling of his wife's detention.
She wanted to say to him, I just want you to know that the mistake, the comments in 2017 had a lasting impact, and even when I was being interrogated at the airport, interrogated just before my last day, they brought up and said, listen, just tell us now, because obviously your foreign secretary and then Prime Minister reveals what you've been doing. You can tell us what you were really doing. It wasn't just during a holiday. She said, no, I lived with that for ages, and I know it was a mistake, but it lingered.
The UK has announced 12 new sanctions against Russia targeting President Putin's financial network, including his ex-wife and cousins. The Foreign Secretary, who's in Germany for a G7 meeting, says pressure also needs to be applied on Moscow by supplying more weapons to Ukraine. The EU has announced it's providing a further £425 million worth of military support and hopes a deal can be reached for an embargo on Russian oil. Colleen Rooney has told a court she was fuming after an article about an alleged car accident appeared in The Sun. Giving evidence at the so-called Wagatha Christie libel trial, she said the crash didn't happen and she suspected Rebecca Vardy of leaking stories from her social media account. She says the sting operation was a last resort. Mrs. Vardy denies allegations she leaked false stories, deleted WhatsApp messages and spoke to journalists. Elon Musk's £34.5 billion Twitter deal has been put on hold, but he says he's still committed to the acquisition. The Tesla CEO says he's waiting for data on the number of spam and fake accounts, which are thought to represent less than 5% of users. One of Mr. Musk's key aims is to, in his own words, defeat the spam bots. And the Queen has attended day 2 of the Royal Windsor Horse Show. Smiling and looking relaxed, there'd been speculation she might not make it to the annual event after missing the state opening of Parliament. More than 500 horses and 1,000 performers are taking part in the grounds of Windsor Castle. The monarch has attended every year since it started in 1943. It's the first major event in the Queen's Platinum Jubilee festivities, celebrating her 70-year reign. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Arlene with the briefing.
Thank you, Rhiannon, and welcome back to the briefing. And what wonderful photographs those were of Her Majesty the Queen. It really lifts your heart to see them. Well, the row over the Northern Ireland Protocol has escalated further this week after the Attorney-General said that the government is within its rights to deal with the problems caused by the operation of the protocol. Some believe the UK will face a potential backlash if they choose to override it. So what will happen next with the protocol? And what should the government do to resolve this ongoing dispute? Well, joining us to discuss the latest developments live from Stormont is our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie. Dougie, bring us up to date with what's been happening in Northern Ireland today.
Well, it started this morning, the leader of the DUP, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, releasing information that they were not going to elect a speaker, effectively paralysing the government behind us. We've been operating with a zombie-type government, if you like, for quite a while, since the leader here, Paul Givan, resigned as First Minister. So what happens was we don't have an executive. We have the Assembly and then we have the executive, a cabinet, if you like. It's an enforced coalition under the Good Friday Agreement that operates on consent between nationalism and unionism. And of course, there's all this palaver over who's going to be First Minister. They're exactly the same office. Deputy First and First Minister, one cannot operate without the other. So the thought here was that they wouldn't sort of designate a First Minister, but that's not going to happen. They didn't even happen to put together a Speaker. Now, that causes a problem for the British government, but this isn't unusual in Northern Ireland. Back in 2017, Sinn Féin collapsed these institutions for 3 years. The very spot that I stand in now, right over my shoulder, Julian Smith, the then Secretary of State, and the Taoiseach Simon Coveney came down here one night to announce new decade, new approach, and all that had to do with it in order to get that government up and running 3 years on. Then came the protocol, which has taken away the consent from unionism, and they have returned after this election with a smaller DUP, but still a substantial unionist vote. In fact, not one unionist backs the protocol. And in fact, worse for anybody that thought the protocol was going to mellow, the TUV of Jim Allister's party, that was very much right-wing on this, gathered 65,000 votes out of the DUP. Now, we can only assume at that stage of the game that the DUP have said to the British government, we can go no further with this. And this leaves problems for the British government as to where they're going to go. I would imagine the pressure now is most definitely on Dublin from Europe, because what is going on in the Ukraine at the moment, as we spoke about back in November, is playing into the EU more than anything. You would have to ask former Soviet states to sanction Britain in some sort of trade war. And when you take it that even those missiles that are shooting down Russian planes and armaments are manufactured right here in Northern Ireland, I couldn't see that happening.
OK, Dougie, thank you for bringing us up to date there from a very sunny Belfast in Stormont. And in the past hour, Lord Frost has also spoken, the former Brexit minister. He spoke to GBNews' Alex Phillips. And this is what he had to say regarding the Northern Ireland Protocol.
We are indeed trying to push the case that the protocol is at the end of the line. The best way forward would have been to renegotiate it, as we suggested last year, but we keep hearing from the EU, the government keeps hearing that they're not interested in doing that. They're only interested in talking on their terms. And I think we've reached the end of the road. At least that's what I would tell the government. And they now need to act to protect the integrity of the country and the UK's own internal market rather than the EU's. The situation in Northern Ireland speaks for itself. To make progress in Northern Ireland, you need the consent of both communities and all range of opinion, and it's very clear that that doesn't exist. And the DUP's refusing to nominate a speaker and to take part in the institution simply symbolises that fact. It doesn't cause it, it just makes it obvious. It makes clear what we have been saying for a long time, which is that you can only proceed by consensus, and that's how it is. So we've got to find another way forward.
That was David Frost speaking to this channel just about half an hour ago, actually. And joining us now is Conservative MP and member of the European Scrutiny Committee, Marco Longhi. Marco, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It feels like we've been here before. Do you think that there's actually going to be action on the protocol this time round?
Hello, Arlene, and it's a pleasure to talk to you, I believe, for the very first time. Yes, is the answer to your question. I do get a sense that the mood is one of determination on behalf of the government to now make some significant progress. I think all possible diplomatic routes between the lines, reading between the lines, have probably been exhausted. Someone like me would have said, well, this comes as no surprise because we've seen the EU behave in such an unreasonable way so many times before, haven't we? So yes, I'm hopeful, if not even confident, that we will be seeing some positive announcements in the not too distant future.
And you mentioned there's been a lot of negotiations, and of course the European Union have always been very strident about Northern Ireland. There were some comments made about Northern Ireland during the initial Brexit negotiations that Northern Ireland was the price of Brexit way back in 2017, 2018. Then, of course, we had the protocol, which was forced upon the people of Northern Ireland without their consent. And I thought it was interesting to hear, Marco, David Frost, the former Brexit minister, speaking about the need for the country to have unity and to have integrity. Because, of course, the UK is sovereign when it comes to Northern Ireland. And I think it's important that people listening and watching this show today understand that that is the case.
Well, Arlene, I am a member of the Conservative and Unionist Party. When I, as an ardent Brexiteer, voted in the referendum for Brexit, I voted on the basis of us being one United Kingdom. And one of the bitter pills that I very much had to swallow in order to get the deal over the line was this wretched protocol. And there are many like-minded people, and Number 10 knows that, who really do believe that the Northern Ireland Protocol has reached something of the end of the line. I think that every effort, and quite rightly so, has been made on behalf, by governments, ministers, and officials to try and make it work, to recognise the difficulties that and such a complex situation that we have in Northern Ireland, and to respect the Good Friday Agreement. But ultimately, the integrity and sovereignty of the United Kingdom has to be the number one priority.
And Marco, one of the issues I have felt all along where there has been a real problem is the misunderstanding of and I'm putting that at the lowest point I can, the misunderstanding of the Belfast Agreement by those in Europe that are negotiating. Because, of course, the Belfast Agreement at its very heart has the fact that the consent of the people of Northern Ireland will be taken in relation to the sovereignty of Northern Ireland. So, therefore, we are still a part of the UK. But also in terms of moving forward in terms of the two communities in Northern Ireland, the Unionist community and the Nationalist community must have that consensus in moving forward. It appears that the European Union doesn't get that. Now, I've listened to David Frost. He very clearly gets that. He's been talking about it today, about the fact that you have to have consensus in Northern Ireland. But why is it, do you think, that Europe has turned its face against that fundamental part of the Belfast Agreement?
For two reasons, I think, Arlene, and what you have touched upon one of them. I think giving them, if you like, the benefit of the doubt that perhaps they are misunderstanding, I would say perhaps choosing to misunderstand the agreement, is for their benefit. And they have tried all along, Arlene, I'm sure you will agree, to weaponise the complexities that we have in Northern Ireland with the United Kingdom border being with the Republic of Ireland, and it was always used as a tool in the Brexit referendum and subsequently to make things as complicated as possible, rather than the two, the EU and the government of the United Kingdom working in good faith. I do believe that the British government has shown all manner of good faith and patience in negotiations. They have really tried everything. Make no mistake, this is about the EU's attitude and their behaviours, and they've done it before, but they will see that the British government will do the right thing by its people, and that includes all of the people, both communities in Northern Ireland.
And I think that's the important point. This is about both communities in Northern Ireland. It's about the economic prosperity of Northern Ireland. And of course, we've seen costs go up in Northern Ireland. We've seen the choice of our goods be restricted because some people have decided not to get involved in the bureaucracy of sending goods from GB into Northern Ireland. But finally, Marco, I think you will agree with me, but I'm going to ask you this anyway. Whatever about the economic impact, this is fundamentally about sovereignty, isn't it? It's about the UK as a whole, acting as a whole, and that's why the government needs to act on behalf of the people of Northern Ireland in relation to the protocol.
Yes, absolutely, Arlene, and I think I made that point earlier on in the interview. This is about one United Kingdom, one sovereign territory, and Northern Ireland is very much part of that.
Well, Marco, thank you for joining me. It's really lovely to have you on the programme. I hope it's not the last time we'll have a chance to discuss that. Perhaps we'll be talking about what's going to happen post the dealing with the protocol. But in the meantime, Marco Longi, who's the MP for Dudley North, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And after the break, we'll be discussing the impact of loneliness on our well-being as part of Mental Health Week. I'll be talking to the MP, Ben Everett. And we'll hear from a Troubles Victim Support Group about how those affected by terrorism feel about the recent Assembly election results. And should the government press ahead to scrap a fifth of the civil service workforce? Well, we'll be speaking to a representative of the Civil Service Union about that. All that and more. But before then, let's take a look at the weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGiven from the Met Office. It's turned into a fine day for most of us, but it's still fairly windy in the north and there is some rain around. Most of it associated with a couple of weather fronts crossing the far north of Scotland, so northern and western Scotland, and for some parts of northwest England, mainly over the hills, it's a damp afternoon. A lot of cloud in the north as well, northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, but some breaks developing as we head through the evening. The wind also easing following a blustery day, patchy cloud for Wales in the southwest, but lengthy clear spells elsewhere. And as that wind dies down with those clear spells, well, it'll be a fresh night. Temperatures dipping into the single figures for many and down to 2 to 4 Celsius in some sheltered spots. Nevertheless, it's a bright start to the weekend for many of us. Some outbreaks of rain in the far north of Scotland, but even here it tends to dry up and brighten up by the afternoon. Lots of sunshine breaking out widely across the UK. Saturday looking like the best day of the weekend for dry and fine weather. And with that sunshine, temperatures up to 16, 18 Celsius, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Could see 20 in the east of Scotland, but more widely 20 to 24 Celsius further south across England and parts of Wales. But as temperatures rise, there is a threat of showers or thunderstorms breaking out on Saturday night, initially southwestern areas and then developing more widely across the southern half of the UK. The greatest risk of lightning around the English Channel coast, but it's going to keep things mild overnight. The brightest skies first thing across Scotland and Northern Ireland on Sunday morning. But even here there'll be some cloud and showers pushing into southern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland during the morning. Further south, a brighter end to Saturday, but further showers arriving overnight. And then Monday, Tuesday look more unsettled with rain or showers for many.
Since the first Gulf War, I've covered complex conflicts around the globe. For comprehensive coverage of the ongoing situation in Ukraine, join me, Alastair Stewart, every Saturday and Sunday from noon.
If you are the most authoritarian regime, at some point they will rise up.
We think it become more dangerous.
You cannot occupy a country of that size.
And that means World War III.
That means war. Putin did not expect that.
That's me, Alastair Stewart, from 12, Saturday and Sunday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Welcome back to The Briefing. It's 24 minutes past 3 in the afternoon. And this week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's a chance to focus on good mental health. The theme this year is focused on loneliness. And looking back at the last 2 years, the pandemic has increased the impact on people's mental health and well-being. Loneliness has played a big part as people felt very isolated. Joining me now is Ben Everett, who's a Conservative MP for Milton Keynes North, who has been speaking out about the impact coronavirus had on children's mental health and well-being. Thank you so much, Ben, for coming on the show. This is a hugely important issue, and one I know that you've been speaking out about for quite some time now. What can we do and what can you do as an elected representative to try and help break that issue of loneliness?
Thank you, Arlene. It's great to be on, and nice to see you again. Ultimately, combating loneliness is a team game. It's not just up to the government. It's not up to the person feeling lonely or any kind of one set of institutions or organisations. It really is a team game. So anybody that feels that they are lonely or that they know somebody who's lonely can just reach out. And that is the first and most important thing that anybody can do in areas like this. Reach out, talk to people either by phone or WhatsApp or by email or whatever. Make sure that we keep that contact going. You asked what specifically the government can do. There is an excellent segment on the NHS website at the moment detailing these really simple tips that may feel like a really big step if you are feeling lonely or if you're feeling shy about contacting somebody who may be lonely. But actually, it just helps you understand that it is really a simple thing that you can do that can really help make a difference in these matters.
And this Mental Health Awareness Week is obviously a good time to speak about these issues and to highlight what's been going on, not just during COVID, but actually in our communities every day. And it's about building connections with friends and families and communities and having the tools to do that, because we know loneliness can lead to mental health problems, but it can also be a product of mental health problems. Isn't that right, Ben?
Very much so. And you're right to mention the pandemic as well, because of course we've been isolated and vaccinated and masked and socially distanced and antibacterial washed for nearly 2 years now, and that really does take a big toll on the nation's mental health. So it does come down to the communities that we're in, the groups that we're in, doing the things that we enjoy doing with people that we see regularly, starting new things that we've always wanted to do. There are plenty of things that we can do, and that as communities and groups that we maybe haven't been able to do in real life over the last few years, but really can do now. One of the things that I've been passionate about is getting out inside nature. Time in nature is never, ever wasted, as you know, and we're very lucky here in Milton Keynes to have excellent access to green spaces, so that whenever the sun shines, or even if you fancy a walk in the rain, you can get outside, spend some time in nature, listening to the sounds of the outside, with company, with friends, or just enjoying a brief moment by yourself, just really to recharge the batteries and refresh your mental health.
It's interesting you say that, Ben, because sometimes I think when we're at home and we're watching TV, it can take a bit of an effort to go outside and go for a walk and to make yourself go for that fresh air, frankly. But when you're out there, you do feel the benefit of it, don't you? And it's about trying to get to that stage to make yourself go out and to have that fresh air and to actually perhaps meet people when you're out for a walk.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not only the fresh air, of course. You know, the vitamin D and the sunshine is fantastic. It was something that, again, we almost found we really valued during the pandemic as well, for its health benefits and mental health benefits. But yeah, it really is just about getting out of the house and recognizing that the things that you're connected to inside your house, social media, via your phone or the television, don't necessarily reflect real life. You know, and if you're thinking about comparing how you're feeling at a particular time to what you're seeing broadcast to you on the television or sent to you, posted to you on social media, those things represent people at the peak of their happiness, and you shouldn't really be comparing yourself to what you see going on, because it's not real life. So getting out of the house, unplugging, and getting into the fresh air and nature really is an excellent way to start. But as I say, it really is all about talking to people, making those connections, be it by WhatsApp or by the phone or by email, making sure that you just reach out to somebody that feels lonely, or if you are feeling lonely.
And I've often reflected, Ben, and we'll have to make this my final comment, but I've often reflected that the pandemic had two groups who were really affected by it. One was the elderly people who felt isolated because people weren't calling with them and having those conversations. But this is another group I know you've taken a great interest in, as young people, and the fact that they couldn't have their sports activities and get out and meet their peers. Hopefully that's something now that we can try and tackle to encourage young people to get outside and to enjoy their sports and to really start mixing with their peers again.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not just the sport, Arlene. It was the kind of the whole structure and rigor and regularity around a school day, around the socialisation that children had that we missed for such a long time. That's why it was such a priority for the government to get the schools reopened, not just because of that kind of lost learning, which we're taking steps to catch up on, but all about the structure and discipline of a school day that children lost. And I know that young people in Milton Keynes were saying to me that they were really worried about the mental health of themselves and their peers. So there is plenty to do to sort of support that generation of children that have gone through it. We probably will end up with a very robust generation of children and young adults as we come through this, because it's quite something to live through. It really is one of those kind of almost wartime-like experiences in the way that the whole country was mobilised, and that sort of was normalised for a whole generation of children. But we do need to make sure that we don't have this ticking time bomb of mental health for those children that have been through it, and that we have extra support where necessary that is currently being provided by the government, not just to catch up, but also to support with those mental health issues as well.
Well, Ben, thank you. And I know that there are some young people who have actually come forward with their own mental health and wellbeing groups now, and they're actually supporting each other. And I think that's a really positive thing that has happened since the COVID pandemic. But thank you for joining me this afternoon to talk about this really, really important issue. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for having me.
After the break, we'll be speaking to Kenny Donaldson from a Troubles Victim Support Group to hear about those who have been affected by terrorism and how they feel about the recent Assembly election results. Plus, the government has come out with new plans to axe 91,000 civil servants as part of the new plans to reduce government spending. But first, here's Rhiannon with the news headlines.
Arlene, thank you. It's 3:32. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Unions are threatening national strikes over government plans to axe around 90,000 civil service jobs. The Prime Minister wants to free up billions of pounds to ease the cost of living crisis. Downing Street hasn't ruled out compulsory redundancies, but it's hoped a lot of the cuts will occur through natural attrition. The DUP says blocking the election of a Speaker to the Northern Ireland Assembly sends a message to the EU and the government that the post-Brexit trading agreement isn't working. Party leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson also says they won't nominate a Deputy First Minister, preventing a new executive from forming. Former Brexit Minister Lord Frost says they need to find another way forward.
Make progress in Northern Ireland, you need the consent of both communities and all range of opinion, and it's very clear that that doesn't exist. And the DUP's refusing to nominate a speaker and to take part in the institution simply symbolises that fact. It doesn't cause it, it just makes it obvious. It makes clear what we have been saying for a long time, which is that you can only proceed by consensus.
Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe's husband says the Prime Minister didn't explicitly apologise for how her detention in Iran was handled. The former British aid worker, who was held captive for 6 years, met Boris Johnson for the first time since returning to the UK in March. She told the Prime Minister she'd lived in the shadow of his words, which had had a big impact on her for the best part of 4.5 years. And smiling and looking relaxed, the Queen has attended the Royal Windsor Horse Show. The monarch's attended every year since it started in 1943. It's the first major event in the Queen's Platinum Jubilee festivities, celebrating her 70-year reign. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.22 to the dollar, the pound is 1.17 to the euro, and the price of gold currently stands at £1,484.26 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the briefing. So last weekend, Sinn Féin became the largest party in Northern Ireland after the Assembly elections. Many focused on the historic nature of a Republican Party holding that position. But how do the victims of IRA terrorism feel about a party holding this position, whilst they continue to justify the actions of the past? Well, joining me now is Kenny Donaldson from the victims group Seth, which advocates on behalf of innocent victims of the Troubles right across the UK. Kenny, thank you for joining me this afternoon. And first of all, I suppose for the benefit of our viewers and our listeners, can you tell them what you do with victims and how you advocate for them?
Surely. Well, thank you. Thank you, Arlene, for having us on your programme this afternoon. It's much appreciated. In terms of the group formed in 1998, actually on the day of the Omagh bombing, by chance rather than design. And as you say, we provide support services across Northern Ireland, Great Britain, and indeed outreach into the Republic of Ireland. Those services would spiral very practical supports for victims and survivors around their welfare needs, other issues around re-education programmes and giving them the opportunities in life that they were denied. It also covers the full spectrum of psychological support services. And then critically, I have to say, Arlene, our raison d'etre and reason for being to advance justice, truth and accountability issues on behalf of those individuals, and to ensure that the narrative of the past is not misconstrued, that the integrity of the past is preserved as an honour to those who have been murdered so senselessly and with sectarian and ethnic hatreds at their fore.
And Kenny, I said in the introduction that your organisation represents innocent victims. It's all innocent victims right across the piece. It doesn't matter who was involved in making them victims. But I'm interested to know how all of your members, how they feel about Sinn Féin becoming the largest party in Northern Ireland, and with that having the right to nominate the First Minister for Northern Ireland.
Well, I have to say that over those immediate hours in the aftermath of the election, and indeed, I suppose, the speculation of the result in the run-up to the election, we received calls from right across Northern Ireland, but from Cork, from Limerick, from ever in between in the Republic, and then right across the United Kingdom, from victims and survivors who were a range of views, certainly an anger, a frustration, just a sense of how can 250,000 of the population of Northern Ireland possibly give an endorsement to, as you say, those whom would continue to justify the horrors of our past. Now, Sinn Féin have played a blinder in recent months, there's no question of that, in that the candidates that they put forward this time around, there were 4 of those candidates who have criminal convictions related to the Troubles. They had a swipe of candidates who were involved removed this time around, and that is without question an attempt on their part to present the party in a very different way. But as we know, the Chief Constable, along with the Garda Commissioner, have confirmed that Sinn Féin policy continues to be controlled by the Provisional IRA Army Council.
And for our viewers and listeners, perhaps particularly in Great Britain, Kenny, they will be amazed that people who have criminal convictions for terrorism can be involved in elected politics. But that's something that happens every day in Northern Ireland. And you're right, they have tried to detoxify, if you like, some of those people by taking them out of elected politics. No doubt they're working in the background now. But I just wanted to ask you about this issue of the glorification of terrorism, which still continues to this day by members of Sinn Féin. And we know, you and I both know, that there are deceased members of the IRA who were on so-called active service, going out to murder people who were then killed themselves. And those people are still remembered as heroes. And that surely hurts your members on a day and daily basis.
Well, absolutely. And I suppose to give listeners across GB a sense of this and how it plays out practically, we have obviously a constituency in Northern Ireland known as South Down. And in that particular constituency, the MP is one Chris Hazard of Sinn Féin. The constituency office to which he provides supposedly services to the full community is within a building which is named after two provisional IRA tourists. Now, that's allowed to happen in this place of Northern Ireland. And I would challenge, our viewers across GB to put themselves into the space where, in terms of the Manchester Arena attacks, where there were to be someone to be elected from an extremist position in the context of that issue, and they were to name a building after the Manchester bomber, it wouldn't happen. But yet we are expected time and time again in Northern Ireland to suck this up, that this is part and parcel of our peace process. But of course, we don't have a peace process here. We have an appeasement process. And victims and survivors have come to a point of feeling that we need to recalibrate things. We need to pause. We need to stop. We need to look at what we have done over the last quarter of a century. And we need to somehow stop the drip feed to the destruction of our society. And that's what it is. People being goaded day and daily, being poked in the eye by all forms of commemoration. So the person who would be our First Minister only a small number of weeks ago was standing at a commemoration in East Tyrone, which was lauding three provisional IRA tourists who happen to be members also of the Gaelic Athletic Association. Those two issues are not consistent.
Yeah. And I think, Kenny, and this is the final point we'll make because unfortunately I'll have to wrap up, but I mean, when you hear Michelle O'Neill say that she will be a First Minister for all in Northern Ireland, and then you put that against what you've just mentioned, the fact that she stood at an IRA commemoration just a very short time ago, that is very difficult to reconcile and very difficult for those of us who live in Northern Ireland to see.
Well, absolutely, Arlene. And this is the point in all of this. People have been fed up for the last quarter of a century of choreographed words and all these efforts to, in a sense, provide a sense that things are moving forward, that somehow that we're all together in this. When the truth is that there is a section of our population whom are hurting very, very badly through all of this. Victims and survivors were used as the collateral damage in the context of the Troubles. And for the last 25 years, they've borne the pain ever since. And when things are done either overtly or indeed covertly, as has often been the case, particularly within the Blair government days, then we arrive at a position where what has happened in recent days was possible. This was merely the manifestation of 25 years of an appeasement policy. And now we need to recalibrate, we need to reset, and we need to be clear that we deserve better in Northern Ireland than what we've had.
Well, Kenny, thanks for joining me this afternoon. I think it's really important that people hear the voices of those who have really suffered during IRA violence and indeed all violence in Northern Ireland over the years. So I'm really pleased that you could come on this afternoon and talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Thank you.
So then, in an exclusive interview for GBNews, Brexit Opportunities Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg says that the EU is trying to punish the UK for leaving the bloc, no matter the consequences. And during a tour of a biscuit factory with our political correspondent Tom Harwood, Mr Mogg said that it's not our business if the EU retaliates with tariffs due to the rising tensions over the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Businesses like this are very dependent They heat every biscuit for 9 minutes. So that is an enormous amount of energy that is being used.
And they don't just heat that biscuit once, because the etymology of biscuit, going back to the Latin,
is twice baked.
Twice baked. And I wanted to ask you about twice baked, because in 2019, Boris Johnson stood with a Brexit deal that he said was oven ready. And I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the twice baked.
Well, it depends, of course, what you mean by oven-ready, but very often if you have something that is oven-ready, an oven-ready turkey, you want to have the roast potatoes and the bread sauce, which need to be made homemade. And what we need is the roast potatoes and the bread sauce, and that's dealing with Northern Ireland Protocol, which the treaty itself says is subject to renegotiation. There is provision within the treaty to do that.
Article 13, brackets 8. But does the EU understand that that's our position?
Well, we've been making that very clear to them. If in the end they refuse to move, if they're not willing to act in good faith, then we will have to do things for ourselves. That's obviously the case. We can't accept disruption within the United Kingdom.
And clearly the government is acting as if it wants to protect the Good Friday Belfast Agreement. That's something that I believe the government really does genuinely believe. But I don't think the EU believe that the government believes it's doing that.
I don't think it's worth trying to work out what the EU believes, that becomes a rather philosophical question. I think it wants to make the UK feel bad for having left the European Union. That underpins its whole policy, and it doesn't really mind about the consequences of that. And we just have to get on with life and recognise that we've left, we've got to make our own way, we're an independent country, and what the EU wants or thinks is secondary.
Is talking over then? Have we just sort of given up on that part?
You'll have to ask the Foreign Secretary, but I think she's been saying some interesting things today, and the Paymaster General, Michael Ellis, has made a speech in Brussels today, making it pretty clear that we are, if not at the end of the road, very close to it.
And I suppose next week, as we start in that week, we may well be seeing some legislation. Is the idea that we plough ahead and we try and fix this by ourselves and don't worry so much about the consequences? Some of those consequences could affect businesses not necessarily that are importing, but that are exporting, businesses potentially like factories like these.
Well, to cancel the TCA, the European Union would need unanimity, and it seems to me that's a pretty high bar to get. And you have to say to the European Union, does it really want to punish its consumers at a time of rising inflation? And inflation in a lot of EU countries is higher than it is in the UK. They really want to make prices even higher for their consumers and their voters? I think that's an interesting, important question.
It sounds a bit like brinkmanship, and it's a strong moral argument you're making here that clearly it would be a self-inflicted wound for the European Union to whack up tariffs to try and start a trade war, even though we might not retaliate. But it does sound like we're running these 2017 to 19 arguments all over again.
Well, we can't tell the EU what to do. We have to have an idea of what it may do. And it may decide that it wants an act of self-harm. That is not under our control. But it would be a pretty silly thing for it to do. And we have to govern in our own interest, not constantly dancing around what the EU thinks or doesn't think. We've left. It's not our business anymore.
And that was the Minister for Brexit Opportunities, Jacob Rees-Mogg, speaking to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, in a biscuit factory. And for those of you listening, as opposed to watching the show today, he had a very fetching hairnet on. And I think that's a pity that you can't see that, because it was very, very fetching. I remember wearing those when I used to do factory visits as an economy minister, and they were the bane of my life, believe you me. Anyway, now on to another story, and this same minister has hit the headlines for in recent weeks, saying that the pressure has been on civil servants because, of course, he's been, first of all, trying to get them back into the office, and now there are reports that the civil service workforce could be set to be cut by as much as 91,000. I'm now joined by Stephen Littlewood, who is the Assistant General Secretary for FDA, that's the Trade Union for Public Sector Workers. Thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on the show. We hear that Simon Case, who of course is the Cabinet Secretary, has written to civil servants and has said that he wants an effective, lean and innovative service. Surely you can't disagree with that.
Well, he has written them today. He's done that on the back of the announcement in the Daily Mail by Jacob Rees-Mogg. So it's actually not the Cabinet Secretary who's the first person to announce this to our members. Our members found this out by waking up this morning and seeing on the front of a national newspaper that 20% of staff in the civil service are going to be cut. So when you look at the detail, there isn't actually a lot there. It's very hard for us to engage in what the detail of this is, because it seems to be more about grabbing headlines and actually making a proper plan for a modern workforce. I did see Jacob there in his very fetching hat walking around the factory talking about biscuits being twice baked, but frankly these plans seem half baked. It's really difficult for us to actually grapple with what he's proposing, because there doesn't seem to be anything there. I mean, where are these 91,000 jobs? Where are they going to go from? And what is the government going to stop doing that it's currently delivering? Is he going to cut people in the passport office, which has had its own problems with under-resourcing and delays? Is he going to cut people in the justice sector, in prisons, in courts and tribunals, where there's a huge backlog in cases? We need more detail about where these alleged cuts are going to come from. Nobody's going to object to a leaner, more efficient civil service, but slash and burn headline generating announcements are not the way to get that.
And you say slash and burn is not the way to go, but of course we are in a cost of living crisis, and I'm sure your members know that as much as anybody else living in the UK today. So surely we should be looking for value for taxpayers at this critical time, Stephen.
Of course. And the civil service always delivers value for taxpayers and is always looking at ways to be more efficient. They've already signed up to a 5% cut as part of the spending review to go back to 2019, pre-pandemic levels of staffing. What was being talked about here is 2016 levels, which was a historic low. That was the lowest headcount in the civil service since the end of the Second World War. And what we found when Brexit was happening and when the pandemic hit, those two big, almost unprecedented national challenges, there was no slack left in the system. The civil service at those numbers was unable to deal with national emergencies, and that's why there's been recruitment since 2016 to deal with those things. So I think if we're going to get value for money for the taxpayer, that includes taxpayers getting decent services for the taxes that they pay. And frankly, you have to resource that. The government can decide what the level of staffing in the civil service is. That's always been the government's decision. But they also have a responsibility to make good on their commitments and to deliver services. So they need to say, if they're going to slash 20% of staff, what are they going to cut? What services are they going to cut as well?
So we're told then that the number of civil servants, and we've talked a little bit about the numbers, and there's 475,000 civil servants across the UK at the moment. What do you think is the optimum number? If the government were to say to you, OK, you make the decision then, what number should we go to?
Well, the point is that I don't make the decision. The decision is made by ministers, and the decisions are based on the commitments that ministers have made. So the optimal number is the number that can deliver the government's agenda. If the government believes that it can deliver an agenda based around 385,000 civil servants, which is the number in 2016, then it's free to choose to do that. But as I say, they have to set out what is it you're going to stop doing that you're currently doing, because you cannot run the services that you're running at the moment with 20% less staff.
Stephen, thanks for joining us this afternoon. It's very good of you to come on the show and to tell us and advocate on behalf of your members. Thank you.
Thank you.
So before we go, let's have a look at some of your views, which you've been emailing in to gbviews@gbnews.uk. Pamela got in touch to say that she wants Lord Frost on the green benches as soon as possible. That's quite a popular view. She's fed up with Labour trying to scupper everything to do with Brexit. Alex says Arlene Foster's a jewel in the crown. My goodness, I'm going to blush in a minute. What a marvellous interviewer. And Mark says, where there's a will, there's a way, and both parties want to trade. The EU have been shown to misuse the protocol, and it must be changed. When signed, we didn't expect it to be misused, and we knew there are articles to be called upon to stop it and renegotiate. The EU are desperate to control us through it. Time to call their bluff. Well, thank you for your views that have been coming in. Please keep them coming, even after the programme. It's so important to hear from you and to reflect on what the country is thinking as we bring you the news stories through GB News. But today, you've been watching me on the Briefing PM with me, Arlene Foster. The show is back every Friday from 3 p.m. Up next is Nana Akua, and I'll see you very soon.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's turned into a fine day for most of us, but it's still fairly windy in the north and there is some rain around. Most of it associated with a couple of weather fronts crossing the far north of Scotland, so northern and western Scotland, and For some parts of northwest England, mainly over the hills, it's a damp afternoon. A lot of cloud in the north as well, northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, but some breaks developing as we head through the evening. The wind also easing following a blustery day. Patchy cloud for Wales in the southwest, but lengthy clear spells elsewhere. And